Hey everybody, after 2 weeks, we are back, and I am back with my fake voice. I am Greg Srisavasdi. I am your moderator here for Movie Mainline, another episode of Movie Mainline with my buddies Bruce Purkey and Eric Holmes, who has a really interesting title. Luis has something. Luis Lacau is one of our members, as well as Eric Holmes, and I love that name, Eric. What does that say? What does that name say specifically on your thing?
It's obscured. It says Lewis has a thick
Wit. Thick
Dak.
wit.
Dak.
Oh, Dak.
I heard
Dak.
he has a pet duck, doesn't he? I mean, I
yeah.
heard he has a
Yeah,
Yeah,
Lewis.
his duck's really thick.
Well,
it's well fed, you know.
well
What are you gonna
fed. We're all middle-aged folks, but we act like we're teenagers. We do miss you, Luis Lacau. We do miss you
Yes.
this week. He is off doing some family duties. We will see him very, very soon. He's a big part of what we do.
We murdered him.
No,
Lewis is
not.
dead. He's never coming back.
He's coming. Yeah, he's coming back. That's very incriminating, Eric. I don't like that. I still have a lot of things to do with my life. I have to write a screenplay. I have to make something out of my life before we all get thrown in jail. Bruce Purkey, before we start, can you talk about what you've been doing the last week as far as interviewing people for our Movie Mainline community?
Yeah, so I'm doing continuing to do an ongoing series of creator spotlights where someone comes on and they talk about what they're doing creatively. I just recorded one for a band named Bleecker, who is nearby, a really cool duo out of Birmingham, Alabama. Much younger when they talk about their movie picks. It really, I'm like, they say like, oh, I was 13 when I saw The Matrix or something. And I'm like, oh my God. Or they say they're 8. And then I also spoke with a member, Peter Beta, who's in the middle class film class podcast. And they're a really great group of guys. And it's a good conversation. And I'm going to continue these, really reaching out to lots of different people out there. So keep posted and check out the Movie Mainline page, and you will see all those get posted up there.
Yeah, I think middle class film class, they do these quote unquote deep dives for like maybe a movie or two per podcast. That's pretty cool, right? I think that's what
they usually do. They usually do a little bit of news at the front. They do each of them give a couple streaming picks, and then they have like one movie. They have like a wheel they spin. I think Andrew Martin used to do something similar where they have a wheel they spin, and that's the movie they watch the next week. Recently they got really mired down on some very strange movies, The Greasy Strangler, and have you ever seen that movie?
Eric Holmes, I'm sure you have The Greasy Strangler. You've seen that. Let me guess.
Not this week. Next week I will have that. My friend Steve-O's and Gretchen have been begging me to watch it, and we'll do
I'll
that
hop
next
on
week.
when you talk about it. I won't talk about it this week, but I'll hop on when you talk about it.
We'll tease for next week. Next week we'll do Greasy Strangler. But yeah, that is on the
and if you see The Greasy Strangler, the main character in The Greasy Strangler is played by Michael St. Michaels, and they get him on the phone in the last episode. So that's just a little fun to send you over their way. But it's a really fun conversation I have with him. So that should be coming up soon to check it out.
Are you picking up any interviewing skills the last maybe several weeks, Bruce? Just talking to people, and how's that been, man? Just learning, or have you always had those skills anyway? So you're good.
My biggest, I guess, all it is that I just don't care and I don't get embarrassed. So I just have to stop myself from talking. Usually, last night we were speaking until like after midnight, and I finally, after about an hour and a half, I said we probably should shut it down.
Wow.
So I don't know if I'm getting better, but I'm getting longer ones.
You know, here you are. I've been doing interviews. Eric, check this out. I've been doing interviews since 1991, and usually the length of my interviews are about 8 to 10 minutes. So they're very short, uneventful, kind of like insert joke here, but it's really short and not so sweet. But so props to you, Bruce, for the long deep dives on conversations. Eric Holmes, and before we start, what have you been up to? You've been working on your film, your screenplay, or have you been reading scripts?
Yeah, a little bit of all that. Yeah, there's things happening, and hopefully they happen bigly and goodly.
Bigly. See, Eric Holmes uses bigly and goodly.
Tel Aviv.
Well, Eric is being very modest.
I don't know how to say.
I've actually read Eric Holmes' script maybe about a month ago now. We've been dark with Movie Mainline for the last 2 weeks, but I got to tell you, I'm not going to really spoil what it is. It's in the horror thriller genre, and it has a lot to do with faith, and I'm going to be talking about faith a lot in this episode, Eric. You get a little.
And I read it too.
Yeah,
I read it too.
And what is your mini review?
A couple weeks ago. Yeah, I've given him some feedback on it. It's really, really good. And doable. That's a big thing when you're writing a script that you're trying to make an independent level. Like it's something you could actually do. You could achieve it. So
I would say if you would like to read it, I'd say it's not a Marvel movie, so I'm not really trying to keep too many secrets on it. But we'll see how it turns out. 'Cause the thing about making movies is like, I've tried to get the ball rolling on it a couple times, and it's failed a couple times. So this has every opportunity to fail like anything. But I don't know. It seems to be moving along. So hopefully something big will come of it.
One thing I would say, just to add in, is that that it is super readable, and I think that's a good sign. When you have a script, a lot of times, I don't know about you, Greg, but when you read scripts, a lot of times I'm keep going back, like, who's this character? What's this character? Where are they going? What are they doing? This is like, you read it and you forget you're reading a script at a point, and you're just along for the ride, which I think is a good sign that a script is that readable. Then if it's filmed even close to that level, I think it should just suck the viewers right in and pull them right along. So
I like to suck everyone in.
Suck it. Very, very good. That's a great way to pitch that screenplay in that film, Eric Holmes. But you know what? I'm not gonna even reach that level of your jokery, sir. It's not my jokes aren't gonna be as bigly or as goodly as yours. But Bruce Purkey, you were mentioning Eric Holmes' script is doable. Well, if I was as doable as Eric Holmes' script, I would be going on way more dates than Joe.
Oh, so much. I was going to jump up.
That's how I'm going to say. That's my cheap, horrible joke of the week, folks. I would have quite a flourishing love life if I was as doable as Eric Holmes' screenplay.
No, that was an expensive, lovely joke.
But speaking of expensive, one of the things we want to do with Movie Mainline is to make sure that our listeners, our viewers, are treated to hopefully a lot of streaming picks that maybe they don't have to pay a lot of money for. Hopefully they're members of these various streaming outlets, or maybe it's free on YouTube. Eric, you've had a lot of recommendations on YouTube, so that's really value-added stuff. So we have a lot of recommendations this week. We're going to start first with Bruce Purkey. What's your first recommendation this week for Movie Mainline?
Well, I'm going to start just two really quick ones shoved together that just came out on Hulu. This is really junk food movie, but good junk food movie, I think. That you can just enjoy. You don't have to think too hard, but just have a good ride. Both the new Child's Play, which I liked more than I thought I would like, but I wasn't a huge fan of the old Child's Play. But even more so, and I'm not going to say much about it other than, you know what you get with Child's Play. This one definitely plays with the genre and its conventions, and it has a new doll, which people are pissed off because the doll looks different. But I think this new doll actually is so weird and unusual looking that it's actually creepier than the original doll, in my opinion, because it just looks terrible. Anyway, move that aside. It's a fun, stupid watch. Crawl, though. Crawl is worth watching.
So it's not junk food. Crawl is not junk food then?
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, it's an alligator. You're trapped in a basement with giant alligators in a hurricane. I mean, that's not fine dining, but
that sounds like gourmet dining to me. That sounds like 5-star hotel stuff. It's done effectively. It's done well. It never gives up. It's just fun, filmmaking, but not to the cheese side of like Sharknado. It's taken it a little bit more seriously, and it's by it's Alexandra Asia, which, if you know that name, Alexandra Aja. I think his name is Aja.
Thank you, Eric, for the pronunciation there. And he's most known for what is it? High Tension or Haute Tension, and he did
Tension.
Yes, I think it was French though, so maybe. And he did what else did he do? He did the Hills Have Eyes remake. He did
Piranha
Piranha
3D.
3D. Yeah.
I interviewed him years ago for this movie called Mirrors with Kiefer Sutherland, and that had a really great, scary, gory moment. He's really good with those kind of moments, and I think this is one of his. I haven't seen that remake of The Hills Have Eyes, but I think he's quite a talented filmmaker, and I thought he really did a great job with Crawl. Eric, have you seen Crawl already? Did you love it?
No, that's if you remember, maybe it was the last episode, but we had Brandon on. He may want to review Crawl the next coming weeks, but yeah, we got it on DVD, and I'm just waiting to watch it with Brandon.
Oh, cool.
5 years old and loves horror movies.
I've been trying to get my kids to watch it, and I haven't done it yet, but it's got a few gory moments, but it's other than a few gory moments, it's pretty safe. But it's just fun, stupid, but good. I mean, you've seen it, right, Greg?
Yeah, I really honestly,
yeah.
I paid money to see it. Yeah. I know Anderson. I don't know if Anderson saw it. I forget, because usually by the time we talk, he hadn't seen it yet, and then he waits, and then it's mentioned on another pod. But I think he liked it sort of, but I flipped for it. I thought this was elevated junk food. I was thinking maybe this is like Top Chef junk food.
Well, this is like a good popcorn movie, I think, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great popcorn movie. You know what you're gonna love, Eric? It has a cheesy premise, but like Bruce says, it does it in a very, very, it's just very well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His movies are usually pretty. What do you call them? Kind of what you described. He doesn't go above and beyond, but he kind of stays in his lane and usually does it pretty well. Except for like High Tension would probably be the one example where if that ending did not suck as bad as it did, there's a twist ending at the end of High Tension that just does not work. But everything leading up to that is like really, really good. Just really tight, really good. It's just the twist doesn't make sense. Like when you go back and think of the geography of things.
Well, and this is one of those movies too, where you can imagine it taking 35 or 40 minutes to get to the meat of the story, right, Greg? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like they do a whole bunch of character introduction, and this is so tight. It's just like you meet the girl, she's going to go to her dad's house to get her dad. They end up in the basement. There's alligators. Boom, we're off to the races. And there's a bunch of other complications. And that's the other thing that's really fun about it is that every time they have like one hurdle to get to, they give you another complication, and they keep it interesting all the way throughout. So I think that it's definitely super fun and a super quick, good, straight ahead thriller movie.
Cool. So both of these recommendations are streaming currently on Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. Cool. Eric Holmes, what do you have? What's your first couple?
I didn't see any movies. I don't like movies. Okay, maybe I saw a couple of them.
Yeah.
There was a 2019 movie by a director. Let's get the name here. Wantai Lee. Okay. And it's called The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is on.
I watched that movie. I was looking forward to it. Tell me about that.
Well, you can watch this movie because this movie is on YouTube. You got to make sure because there's one version on YouTube that has the movie with no subtitles, and they got the other movie with English subtitles. It's not English with no subtitles. It's just the movie. And I got like halfway through, I'm like, I don't understand. But as I'm watching it, as of now, it's on YouTube with subtitles. So you can find that. You can rent it. I would probably rent it because the movie's good enough that I should probably throw a couple bones to the filmmaker. Currently, it is 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb. So that's a pretty good rating, I think.
That's a good rating for IMDb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 6.9 is a good rating for any movie. Basically the movie's about the serial killer going around. What the serial killer does is bump people. He's following people in his car, And then when they stop, he bumps the back of them. Oh, no, I hit you. And then as they're taking pictures of the damage, he stabs them and murders them and then drives off. And there's a cop played by the guy that played Jun Tae-soo. The guy that is the cop is played by the cop. And
is it grisly? Is it gory? Is it a little, or it's not that?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's kind of like it's on the level of Memories of Murder or Zodiac or Seven. It's kind of one of those type of movies. Although this one has a bit more action. Well, first I won't get ahead of myself. So the cop is an asshole. As we've seen, he's likes to abuse his power and puff his chest out and abuse people. But he's good at his job, so I guess it doesn't matter. This is really problematic, I would assume, for a lot of people to watch with that character because of recent.
Yes.
Let's be honest; these aren't recent events.
They're not too recent.
Ongoing events. Let's say
ongoing. Okay.
But the weird thing is, and they do this in Memories of Murder. I'm not from Korea or Japan, so I don't. I think this is probably South Korean. I could be wrong. Pretty sure it is though. But I don't know what the police force is like there. But I get the sense that they take a lot of. They model a lot of the characters off of characters from American films. If that makes sense.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I think they like the Tango and Cash, and they like the Steven Seagal movies, and they try to model their characters off of those characters rather than maybe modeling them off of actual police force in their own area. Or maybe that's just how they are. I don't know. But so the cop's going to look for the serial killer, and while he's doing that, he gives shit to the gangster. Played by Dong Seok Ma.
Yeah.
This guy looks like a jacked Greg Srisavasdi, and he was easily
look it up.
He was easily my favorite character in this thing.
I'm not jacked. Look at this. No, not so much.
No, actually, if you got more tattoos, you would look exactly like him because he's got that. He's got that kind of. He's looking around. And he's like just kicking the shit out of people, and all I can do is look at him and go, "God, this guy's so cool! I can't wait to watch him review movies. This is gonna be so good."
Very funny. I gotta check this out. I gotta rewind it for next week.
But you definitely have to. So this guy's just a complete badass. The one of the opening scenes is he's just hitting this punching bag, just fucking going like each punch just feels like he's just gonna bust right through the punching bag. And someone comes in, interrupts him, and he's like, "What?" And then the camera points down, and there's blood coming out of the punching bag.
Wow.
And then they open up the punching bag, and there's someone inside. He just put him inside of a punching bag, just beat him to death while he was inside. This guy does not fuck around. But so anyway, the cop fucks with the gangster a bit, and the gangster goes about his business, and he gets bumped. The back of his car gets hit by someone, and it turns out that's the devil. That's a serial killer.
Yeah.
Serial killer tries to kill the gangster and is unsuccessful, although he gets a couple stabs in, and the devil runs away, and the gangster's like, "That motherfucker is gonna die." So then the rest of the story is you have the gangster and you have the cop, and they join forces to try to find the serial killer. If you get him, he goes to justice, and that's what's going to happen. But if I get him, I'm going to kill that motherfucker.
That sounds very cool.
So that's kind of the movie. It's definitely like I said, it's kind of similar to Seven or Zodiac, but it's got like that little hard-boiled cop action movie type flavor to it, and it's pretty good. But again, with things being what they are today and what they have been for a while, maybe this is not the type of portrayal of cops that people want to see. At the same time, they do deal with cops being bad cops. I mean, that's not something they ignore. And that's also kind of a little bit of a flavor of what's going on in this one. But I recommend it. I think 6.9 out of 10 is perfect. A perfect score.
Okay.
And this is a very solid 6 out of 9, and I would recommend it.
Very funny. How's the end of I got that? How's the end of that movie? How's the climax of it?
How do I say this without? It's good. It's good.
Okay.
It's really good. It's not gonna blow your mind, but you know those movies like so you got a couple different types of movies. You got movies like Sixth Sense or Fight Club. It gets to the end and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then you got I'm trying to think of a good example, and now I can't. Now I can't think of any good example. But there's movies where like they don't blow your mind, but they end exactly how they need to.
Sure.
Like it's not what you would have thought. But this is kind of this makes sense. It's kind of one of those movies.
Okay.
It's the ending won't blow your mind, but it's got a little treat at the end that's kind of fun, and it's it ends in a good place, I think. Well, not a good place, but for a movie, it ends pretty well, I think.
Ends pretty well. Okay. Well, since you were mentioning Korean films, I'm assuming it's a Korean film, Eric. I have a Korean film. I rarely watch Korean cinema. I should, because I love visualists, and there's a lot of visual filmmakers in Korean cinema. And Bruce and Eric, you guys are horror thriller fans, and so same here. I should be watching more Korean films. I received a screening link last week on this film called House of Hummingbird, directed by Bora Kim. House of Hummingbird. It's opening nationwide in virtual cinemas on Friday, June 26th. So Friday, June 26th, opening in virtual cinemas. Now, it's a pretty standard plot. Okay, it's set in 1994, and it centers on this 14-year-old girl named, I'm not going to try to pronounce a lot of Korean names. It's spelled Eun-Hee. So I'm just going to pronounce her name Uni. So she's 14 years old. She lives in, I guess, in a big tenement, in a big apartment building. The opening shot, I think, is you see her trying to get into her home, and when she goes inside the door, I think the camera pulls back and you see it's just one of many units in this big apartment complex. And when you pull back, it's right. I'm assuming it's the city of Seoul, or it's just one of many millions and millions of stories in the big city. So it's one of those stories. And it's 2 hours and I believe 38 minutes.
Wow.
The story of a 14-year-old girl. And you're thinking, how am I going to sit through a movie about a teenager for over 2 hours? And I said this to Anderson when we were talking on the pod. I remember crying a lot during Gleason, that documentary from several years ago. I'm sure you guys have seen Gleason.
Oh yeah.
Crying. I don't think a movie has made me cry. I wasn't crying buckets, but I was definitely tearing up throughout the entire movie of House of Hummingbird. Now, what it does well is it really gives you an up close and personal look at her struggles. First of all, her family, they love each other, but they're not perfect. She has an abusive brother. Her parents work at a rice cake shop, and they work so hard that when they come home, they really neglect the kids. She has an older sister who likes going out. She's just a normal teenager. So this 14-year-old girl, she's the youngest in the family, but she's also the most talented of the family. She's an artist, and it's about how this girl tries to navigate a very dysfunctional family and try to make it just sort of deal with the tragedies in her own life and reach out to maybe new friends. She's also 14 and actually honestly deals with her budding sexuality via her best friend, a childhood friend, and also another girl she happens to meet during some kind of club, kind of get together, dance club thing. So it really the director, she really focuses in on their lives without making it so sentimental and sappy. It's just like a great character study that doesn't have all the violence, doesn't have all the action. There's not quick cutting. There's not a lot of that, those kind of flourishes. Absolutely zero. But if you're really into a moving and emotional and resonant human drama, and the way they ended up, it's actually centers on a part of the movie. This is not a spoiler because this is part of the plot synopsis. In 1994, there was a bridge I forgot the name of the bridge, but there was a bridge that collapsed. Let me see, looking here. Yeah, I don't know the name of the bridge, but the bridge collapsed and it killed, I don't know, maybe 20, 27 people. And so it centers on that a little bit too, but that's just one of the elements within it's pretty much an epic story. House of Hummingbird is a epic family story. And I know I'm not selling it, but it's really an intimate coming of age drama. I absolutely loved it. And it's one of those movies that I'm going to go back to and see over and over again. Hopefully, if it's on Vudu or if it's on Blu-ray, I'm going to definitely buy it. It's 138 minutes, Korean with English subtitles. This is actually the first Korean family drama that I've ever seen in my life. I don't watch Korean soaps or anything like that, but this is not a soapy film. This is just a real interesting look at a teenager, and you really pull for her to really make it towards the end. So it's House of Hummingbird. That is my pick.
The South Korean movies are just being amazing lately. I mean, the amount of stuff they're putting out in a whole variety of genres. I mean, from, like you said, like dramas to just straight up, sci-fi and horror and action. I mean, South Korea is doing some amazing, amazing stuff.
Is it, you said it was kind of a straight ahead story?
Yeah.
Like, because a lot of Korean movies, especially just Asian cinema in general, they'll have the genre that they do. You've probably seen this in Parasite, but they have the genre, but then they always go in weird directions, but the weird directions kind of actually track with the genre that they're in.
That's
like you wouldn't exactly be able to, like, if you explain it, wouldn't make sense, but like if you watch it, it's like, that kind of works. But does it have anything like that where it,
that's a great analysis,
kind of goes down weird roads, but kind of makes sense with what it's doing?
Okay, no, that's a great point. I didn't know that about Korean cinema, and that's cool that you mentioned that, because this movie does go down a really interesting road. She befriends her calligraphy teacher, and you think the normal trope would be this teacher is older, she's going to give a lot of wisdom to Uni, that 14-year-old girl, and they're going to bond, and she's going to learn a lot from her teacher. It's one of those things that we've seen this story a million times before, but the way it's handled in the movie, it's handled in a very grown-up manner, and it's very true to life, and they actually spend a lot of time in that relationship, and you're wondering, wow, I can't believe that this movie, you think it's going one way, but it goes, to your point, Eric, it goes off a completely different direction. It becomes something else, and you think it's weird, but then ultimately within the big framework of that painting, it absolutely makes sense. So that's so cool. That's why maybe there's a lot of these Korean films are so long, because they give a lot of time for the story to breathe and to evolve, rather than it being like, well, like you said, this is probably not a straight ahead story. It's a straight ahead story in the sense that it's a family drama, like the trope, but like you said, within Korean cinema, it expands the genre, which is, totally. Yeah.
Sweet.
I need to watch more of those films. And,
you do.
I do.
I'll give you a list.
Please give me a list. I still haven't seen Memories of Murder.
That's a good one.
Well, think about it. Remember when you finally watched Mother and you loved it, and it does very similar things. Think about Mother.
Yeah.
I mean, that movie,
the Bong Joon-ho's.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
well, I mean, both
that
are
also
weird,
goes in different directions, but in a completely different way.
But I'm just thinking, like, what you're talking about. If you think of Bong Joon-ho's Mother, I mean, it starts out as kind of like a crime procedural, blah blah blah, with the mom kind of getting involved, but it goes all over weird places in that movie too. But it's amazing,
You know, House of Hummingbird, when I was watching it, it reminded me of what I forgot what's the movie that Kenneth Lonergan did a couple years ago, Manchester by the Sea, right? He got a lot of praise for
Yeah.
that movie. Great film. But several years ago, he finally released Margaret, which is a close to a 3-hour film about a teenage girl played by Anna Paquin in New York. And that movie was basically crapped on because
Mm.
people are saying, why am I going to see a 3-hour movie about this teenage girl? And it does a deep dive on her entire life. It's essentially, I don't know if you guys
Anna
have heard.
Paquin played a teenage girl 3 years ago.
Yeah, you know what's
I
funny?
mean, she does look pretty young, but I don't know if I'm
Isn't she
buying
like
her as a
30,
teenage girl.
32?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is Lonergan, I think he spent almost close to a decade trying to make Margaret. So when it started, she looked like a teenager. And I think when they ended, she still, yeah, like you said, Eric, she still has a youthful look, but
Yeah.
I think it's his masterpiece. And most people crap on that film because it's
So
really,
it was like a Boyhood thing.
it's like
Like they've
that.
been shooting it. Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the, yeah, no, well, no, it's almost like a Boyhood thing. It just took Kenneth Lonergan so many years to finish it because I don't know, maybe production problems or
Yeah.
financing problems. And it's set in New York. It's a great film, but it's
So
one
it's
of these stories.
accidentally Boyhood. It wasn't by design. It just happened to
Yeah,
work out that
it's
way.
accidentally Boyhood, and it's again,
Gotcha.
that's another. I guess I'm going to throw that in. If you see, listeners, if you're at your local DVD or Blu-ray section and you see this film set that says Margaret, and you look at the case and it's just a picture of Anna Paquin, just immediately buy it for whatever it's $5 or $6. Just buy it. It's a beautiful film, but there's not so many films that really deal with a young girl 12 to 15 that's 2 hours and 38 minutes like House of Hummingbird or 3 hours like Lonergan's Margaret. And hopefully, I would like to see more of these movies, not because I'm a creep, but because it really shows, I'm so sick as a male. I'm really sick of seeing coming of age dramas solely from the point of a punk kid or an awkward kid that all of us males can relate to. It's great to see these really epic films
Yeah.
that are female centric, and not it's not when it goes beyond that, fulfilling that quota. It's just these female centric, when these female centric films are bleeping amazing, that's when I'm excited for it. So
Then that and female well, I haven't seen the movies you're referring to, but female centric in the sense of female, like women or girls doing things that
Right.
women and girls do, not strong female characters as in women trying to do men things.
Right.
Like it's women trying to, we know what guys do in movies. We've seen millions of them. To see a woman do a thing that guys do, it's like, okay, cool. But I think the whole point of diversity in film, get women or people of color or whatever, let's not put you in a movie to watch you do what
Right.
I'm sounding like a total social
No,
justice
I know what you're saying.
but,
No, I get it though.
I mean, totally
but the
get
point is, but the point is, like, let's put you in a movie and get your point of view. Let's see a movie about you and what you do, because it's different than what we've seen before. So like when you get I mean, don't get me wrong, it's cool watching Charlize Theron and Mad Max play Furiosa because she's a fucking badass.
Yeah.
But fuck, it's I was gonna have all these ideas and my fucking brain is fried.
Well,
I can't think of anything.
I'm
But it'd be good to see a female movies about females doing female things.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, no, it's interesting POVs. You have to, whether it's a person of color or POC narrative or a female-centric narrative.
Fuck, Lady Bird. That was the obvious
Yeah,
one.
Lady Bird. Yeah, like Lady Bird. These are original films. And it's the most important thing, to your point, Eric. It's number one, the film has to be entertaining, and it's a bonus if it's original. And number two, in my opinion, below that, if it has a POC representation or it's female centric, that's, to me, as a selfish moviegoer, that's an added bonus. So
Right.
Margaret and House of Hummingbird, they exist as classic films for me, like really amazingly entertaining, emotional, well-written, structured movies. But the bonus is the number two part, which is, the female representation. So, and I get what you're saying, Eric, because if you just do a movie with a bunch of 12-year-old girls trying to parrot Stand By Me, and they find a body in the forest or something, and they're trying to avoid a train, and they jump out, and I don't know, if they parrot something like that, then it's just copycatting, just for the sake of representation. And
well,
that's
someone was talking about doing a Lord of the Flies with a female cast, and that might actually be interesting, assuming that they don't just do the same movie swapping roles, swapping gender roles. But it would be neat to see that, all right, you've seen Lord of the Flies. This is what happens when a bunch of boys get stranded on an island, and this is what happens. It would be neat if they took that same concept, put women in there, and this is, now we have the same setup, but different outcome.
right.
Yeah.
Because this is how women deal with each other.
Like, what would the dynamic be differently? Like, how would that dynamic play out in a different way? Or would it play out in a different way? Or how would it, some parts be the same, but some different? I think you're absolutely right on that.
Exactly. I mean, if you're gonna go, I don't want to say go through the trouble, because that's not what I mean. But the diversity is good, but you need to also have the diversity of ideas and the diversity of the ideas that come with the diverse cast, or if you're just going to do white male action movies, but with different people, different color people or different genders, what's the point? Doesn't make sense.
It's like the Marvel universe. It's the same formula.
It's the exact same movie with different skin, and it's not
just
interesting.
Plug people in, and whatever.
Get different people with different ideas and things, and see how the characters shake things up that way. Maybe comes out with a different outcome just by virtue of the fact that you got someone that looks at the world.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
It's just, that's the whole thing about movies is
white guy talking. I'm gonna shut up.
More, I think
No,
it's great to get things that you already relate to in a movie, but it's also great to get a context you totally don't have in your personal experience. That's the whole point of people who love movies. Generally, is that sometimes you can go into a point of view or a context that is not your life, and maybe gain a little bit of understanding, or maybe just see things from a different point of view, or maybe just experience things a little differently. And I think that's, and Anderson has talked about that, the empathy machine idea that I think Roger Ebert came up with. That's a big strength that I think a movie can bring to you. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at there. Or like you said, if you have a situation that's been seen with all guys and you put all women in it, but it's differently played out because of their experience and their outlook and just different way of relating, that might give you a different context or different point of view.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt to have that. It's actually valuable to have that,
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to just do Lord of the Flies exactly the same, but with women, but doing the exact same line, same outcome, it's like, what? I don't know. What's the point? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But get in there, get a, exactly. Like you said, just get a different context, get a different rhythm with the characters. And how's this going to end? I don't know. I'm not, I've never been in this position.
This is not my Lord of the Flies. So how does it end?
Yeah. I don't know.
No, these are all the type of movies.
I wish I didn't keep talking.
No, those are good. Those are good points. These are all the type of movies that we want to see. The only thing is, I'm sure there's a lot of movies out there like the ones that we're just talking about, whether it's POC representation or female-centric films, especially coming-of-age films. The catch is also trying to find these movies in our various streaming platforms. Right. I think it also behooves us as viewers to actually, experiment. Go outside our own lines and try to find these interesting films. And I think as I'm going to mince my words here, but one of the very few positive aspects of this quarantine era that we're living in is we have time alone, which could be really bad. But if you have a little bit
deliver beer.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
Oh, go on.
Okay, yeah. You just said BEER, and I wish I had one right now. But one of the things, that I need to do myself is to go outside the lines and try to find interesting movies. To be honest, I would not have watched House of Hummingbird if I didn't get the screening link. Okay, so that's on me. But I think maybe down the line I should be looking for more of these things, and especially with us, we're in this privileged position where we can actually promote and talk about these movies that aren't maybe at the top of the algorithm on Netflix or Amazon Prime Video or Shudder, all great streaming platforms. But guess what? When you go beyond the 10, it still takes a lot of time. So
Yeah.
And hopefully, Bruce Purkey, you have a couple of more good picks that are maybe
Hopefully.
below the algorithm.
Yeah, maybe. First of all, I wanted to say one of the interviews I just did, the person mentioned one of the most impactful movies to them was Lady Bird. So I think that was a kind of interesting tie-in. So that'll be something you can listen to on that. Mine is actually from Shudder. Mine is from Shudder, but it is actually a perfect tie-in because I want to talk about the Etheria Film Festival shorts collection that's on Shudder right now. Now, you could probably also seek out these shorts individually, but Etheria Film Festival, like South by Southwest, is pretty much unable to happen. And for anyone who doesn't know, Etheria Film Festival is it's all women directors. So all women directors of fantasy, horror, sci-fi, or just, versions of that. And like I think I'd mentioned in my review on YouTube, a lot of them kind of go in similar paths as sort of Black Mirror kind of stuff. So slightly altered realities, but not all of them. Some of them are just kind of social experiments too. And it's a pretty darn good collection of shorts. There's 9 of them. Directors from all over the world. In fact, my favorite short, which was called Maggie May, was directed by, I have to look up the name so I don't get it wrong here.
Maggie May.
Maggie May is the name of the character and the name of the short, but the director is Kia Kate Russell, and she's from Australia. And from what I was looking at on her IMDb, it looks like she started or has done most of her work as like makeup effects and makeup work. But she started directing some shorts, and this one was really good. So once again, I think it's really great. I know it kind of is like a shill for Shudder, but the fact that they're putting out this kind of stuff and giving, like we were just talking about, it's kind of just, perfect segue, right? Here's a place to see all these, women directors' works, shorts, which even get less seen probably than features. And would even get less seen because they can't be the festival is not going to have any screenings really. And Shudder is giving a place for these to all be seen, in one package, which I think is really awesome. Just to say the couple that I really loved the most, that one called Maggie May is really, really great. And once again, I don't want to spoil them because they're shorts. I would say highly recommend searching that one out. And it's got a really great setup where a estranged sister returns home because their mother has died. And she gets there, and her sister, Maggie May, is just like one of those people you kind of, it's almost a traditional, like almost like couch potato, right? She just doesn't care about anything, like very, very strange, like affect, where she just doesn't kind of have any kind of emotion or anything. And they ask her, like, what happened to mom, and it's like, she's like, oh, she fell and I didn't know what to do, and she was hurt, and I didn't know what to do. And everyone's like, you don't blame yourself. You can't do anything about that. And that leads to a very, very dark twist, which I won't get into, but it's pretty amazing. And there's special effects in there, I assume, were done by the director because the special effects, or the makeup effects, I should say, are really, really great. And the other little short that I'll mention, and once again, I would say probably 7 out of the 10 are good, solid, or great. And then there's a couple that are not quite as good, but for a collection of shorts, it's a pretty good batting average, I would say.
Yeah.
And the other one I really loved a lot was called Waffle. And it's named Waffle because the main character is a waffle heiress. And it starts out, and you've got these 2 people. It's Kate, let me make their names right here for you. Katie, played by Katie Maravich, and Carrie, played by Carrie Barker, and Katie's the waffle heiress. And it starts out, you just have these two women. They look like they're in mid-20s, maybe late 20s. They're having like a slumber party, like they're in their pajamas. They're all like super cheery and like, oh, having all the stuff you'd have at like a traditional slumber party. And very quickly you figure out that as time runs out, that there's like this app or there's a service that you pay for, and people will basically be your friend for that amount of time and do whatever you want to do as a friend, but as a friend, not as another kind of service.
Right.
And
I don't know what service you're talking about.
Yes.
We're gonna stick it in your ear as a
friend.
So,
something involves ducks. I don't know. And it very quickly turns, and you find out that the waffle heiress is more than just a purveyor of the service, but she is kind of a very fanatical purchaser of the service. And it goes, but it's very humorous, but it's also kind of weird and twisted, and it's really a lot of fun. Once again, all these are like 10 minutes, 12 minutes. So, how can you go wrong? So I would say check out the Etheria Film Festival, or if for some reason you don't have Shudder, you can look up the lineup, and I'm sure you can find a lot of the individual shorts in a variety of places, because usually you'll see those on Vimeo and YouTube and a lot of places. So
Maggie May and Waffle, the top.
Yeah,
top
there's other good ones too, but I'll just talk about those two. Those are my favorite two.
Cool. Eric Holmes, you got another one coming up?
Yes, I delve into a bit of black cinema. It's a Vietnam movie. Some black people go to Vietnam, come back, and there's a bit of a heist. Little bit of a heist afterwards. This is 1995's Dead Presidents by the Hughes brothers. Perhaps you thought I was.
Nice.
I'm sure you guys have seen Dead Presidents. Yes,
I did. I haven't seen it since it was on VHS.
There's another movie, Vietnam movie. Spike Lee came out recently called The Five Bloods. There's a lot of crossover between these two. I think of the two, I don't know. I love Dead Presidents, and watching The Five Bloods, there's a bunch I like in that too. But there's certain things in it that don't quite add up to me, and I don't know if that's the movie's fault or my fault, because the Black Lives Matter stuff about it makes sense, and the Vietnam stuff makes sense, and the gold heist obviously makes sense, but all those coming together don't quite gel. And then you have Dead Presidents, where they go to Vietnam, and it deals with a lot of similar issues. They go to Vietnam. They deal with the issue of why are we fighting? Why are we even here? Let's forget the fact that we don't need to be here to begin with, but we're black men fighting for a country that doesn't fucking care about us. And then they come back, and so they're Vietnam veterans, when they came back, were treated like garbage to begin with, but they're black people on top of that. Yeah. And so they get put in a position where they have to literally do something I would not. It's weird. I don't support the character's actions, but I understand it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
It's like, what you're doing is wrong. I get why you're there, but it doesn't make it right. But also, had things been a little more, have things been a little more fair to you, then maybe you would not have been in this position to begin with.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about like the Five Bloods. I'm like, what does that have to do with Black Lives Matter? And then I started thinking about that, and then I started putting the pieces together in my head. And so I guess at the end of the day, when I saw Dead Presidents, it made sense to me. Like, everything clicked, and okay, sure. Yeah, it's not an easy story to tell, but it makes sense, and it's a lot of gray area, but most good stories have a lot of that.
Yeah.
The Five Bloods just seemed like a mess. But then the more I thought about it, the more I started comparing it to Dead Presidents, and I started putting the pieces together. So the Five Bloods, when I first saw it, just felt like a mess to me. I'm like, this is way too long. None of it makes sense. And it's just, here's an idea, and here's an idea, and none of it coalesces. And then the more I start thinking about it, is this is a spiritual sequel to Dead Presidents. It's kind of, the puzzle pieces are starting to come together, and it took a while. But that's why I did both movies, because I think they both work as a great double feature, and they complement themselves. They complement each other very well.
So you appreciate,
and to see them so far apart when they were made is kind of interesting,
Yeah.
Yeah, you appreciate it more than now. The Five Bloods, you appreciate it with.
Yeah, well, I mean, I already liked it because I liked the scenes in it, and who's the guy's name that's going to win all the Oscars?
Delroy
Lindo.
Yeah.
That I never doubted that. Watching that, I'm like, yep, that's what's going to happen there. But yeah, it's just that there was a bunch of really great stuff in the Five Bloods, and then they go to like Martin Luther King. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that has to do with taking gold. Okay, they got the gold, and
right,
and then he loves his son, but he hates his son, and then it's this weird confluence. Like there's greed, but then there's also like black oppression, and then there's also like the Vietnam. It's just all these ideas, and the first time I saw it, none of it connected. They were all pretty great on their own, but they never connected until I watched Dead Presidents. And now both movies are kind of mixing up in my mind. I'm like, all right, I see. I haven't quite got it yet, but it's all starting to coalesce now.
Well, Bruce, I know you're feeling on the Five Bloods. You felt that narrative didn't coalesce.
Yeah. I put it this way: I love the characters, and I love their trajectory. Like, I love where they're going and watching them all get there. Like, I'm talking about as characters, like emotionally. And obviously, we all agree Delroy's character and his performance is crazy good. I guess the microcosm for me is there's a scene, I don't know, I want to say 45 minutes in or so, where Delroy and the whole group is in a boat, and there's a chicken.
Yeah.
And a guy is trying to give him a chicken. And that scene, to me, is what I wanted that whole movie to be. That scene is amazing. And it's a small moment that shows you all the crap that's building up in Delroy, and like how, not Delroy, it's not his name, it's his character, but the character he's playing, and just the way he reacts to that moment and that whole interaction there. It's a small interaction, but it shows you so much about his character and what he's haunted by, and how he's creating that world. And I just felt like, to me, this is just to me as a viewer, that the whole almost like Spike didn't trust his characters enough, that he had to give them this kind of action plot to go with it, where it's like, I think the characters were enough that going on a trip to retrieve the body would have been, to me, much more of a power. I just let that journey happen and watch what happens to him on the journey. And the character arcs could have been the same, exactly the same.
Yeah. And
the reveals that happened to Delroy could have been the same without the gold, without the French, bomb guys and all that stuff. I didn't need that stuff.
I thought that way at first, and then when I started thinking about it, because the whole plot of the gold does seem kind of superfluous, but then that's when, because they have the idea of the whole black,
the reparations and stuff,
reparations and
yeah,
things.
Mm-hmm.
But then when they get the gold, the idea is, we got this. We're the heroes. We're gonna Robin Hood this and give it out to our people, and they get greedy and they don't want to do that. And so it one of the things I did like about the Five Bloods is that there was no, and much like Dead Presidents, they're not heroes.
True.
They're not completely villains. There's a lot of gray area in there. You know, we should get the gold. We should bring it back home, and we should, help people out, give it to causes that will support everybody. Well, no, I want to keep it, and so it's nice seeing characters that are under normal circumstances would be seen as flawless heroes, but they're human, they're human like all of us. They got Are you gonna be a hero when this thing happens? We'd like to think so, but until we're in that position, we have no idea.
Yeah.
And so the gold thing, although I agree with you that they could have done without that, that was just another one of those things that kind of added a little extra stink to it, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. No. Mm-hmm. And I'm not in the major group in that. I know that a lot of people love that aspect of it too. I just feel like I could have almost had two movies and enjoyed them.
Definitely
both equally. Yeah. Like I could have had the character movie and loved it, and I could have had the corruption versus the noble cause and the gold mission and had that be a great movie. But together they just were like, it's too much. I can't handle it.
And then the subplot with the daughter.
Yeah, it didn't.
Is that our daughter? That was a good scene. Don't know if it quite fit within the whole.
It was so ambitious. I mean, and I appreciate that. And I know that, Greg, you love it, right?
Yeah, I love
it. All worked for you. It was so ambitious, but for me, it was just like too many plates were spinning, and I was just like, I need to know which plate I'm watching, or at least two plates, and I'll go with those. But there were so many, I was just like, I go here for a little bit, like the daughter. Like it was so small to give us such a big story. I mean, that's a whole big story, really.
Yeah.
That guy and his daughter and all that stuff, that's all real stuff. But to me, it couldn't really be dealt in a satisfying way with such a small amount of time with them. It was just,
Yeah, I think a lot of people really love the movie, but I still think it has its detractors. I think one of the reasons why you didn't like it, that reason
is because you're white.
No, that's totally it, man.
No, because when you're talking about the whole gumbo pot of it all, I thought that was the thing that worked for me. The fact that it couldn't be just one thing. It's one big mess of a film, which makes it work for me because it is so messy.
Right.
It's filmed in different aspect ratios during the flashback. Chadwick Boseman, he has a big role as a squad leader, and it's a flashback. Delroy Lindo, it has a commanding performance, but really there's a lot of other stories beneath him too that need to be told. That ending sequence, which it just basically, not going to spoil it, but it's 12 minutes of what happens next. That could have been scrolled at the end credits, and you're going, what? That's weird. And then you have ultimately when you have greed comes in whenever there's money involved, or gold, right? There's a lot of that conflict in the middle of the movie, and there's so many things flying in and around, and all those, like you said, those French people who are trying to take out the mines out. There's that whole there's a little bit of a love story there. There's just a lot of stuff, but for some reason I just sat back and relaxed, and it just worked for me. And I think it's just different horses for courses for the Five Bloods. It's totally one of those things. Yeah.
Hey, Bruce, I don't want to give you homework, but because I only say this because I was kind of in your position until I saw Dead Presidents. But if you can double feature the two, or at least I don't know how long it's been since you watched Dead Presidents.
It's been long enough that I remember the barest bones of it. So it's been like since it came out, basically. Yeah.
Watch that again, and then kind of keep the Five Bloods in your head as you're watching it, and then maybe watch Five Bloods again. And I don't know if it does to you what it did to me, that might start coalescing things a little more.
Well, even just
I definitely I'll just say it. I needed dead presidents to hold my hand and walk me through the 5 bullets because I could not get through it by myself.
Well, and I think part of that is just the style of filmmaking too. You gotta get your head in that space because it's like jazz filmmaking. You know what I mean? As opposed to
oh yeah, definitely.
So sometimes you just have to come in and like, okay, now that I know what I got, I can kind of hit this again and see it maybe, and my brain will like now, like you said, to me it's almost like I can watch certain horror movies and I know they're ridiculous and they don't make sense like plot wise, but I let myself go to it and I enjoy the ride. And I think to some degree that's almost what you got to do with the Five Bloods. There's some logical stuff in there. You just got to go like, you know what? This is not logical. This is just about these people. And he's just throwing all the stuff at him and letting them handle it. So in that respect, I can see how I might go back and hit that better. But I mean, I love the characters, love them, and I love the acting. And if Delroy isn't nominated, I mean, it's going to be someone's going to like lose something because it's ridiculous. Because the stuff he does in that movie is amazing.
I know you guys each have one more pick before we go. I have one last pick, and this is a pretty big pick. This is as big of a pick as House of Hummingbird. I actually just saw this an hour and a half ago. I saw this.
Tenet. Is it Tenet?
This is no. I did not see Tenet.
Oh.
Maybe my future self saw Tenet. I don't know. Are you guys going to see Tenet when it hits theaters? You're gonna go to theater?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
if it's around here, I will. Which it probably will be because no one cares about anything in Alabama, and they just take their masks off and fly around.
No, I have a huge recommendation. It's this film released in 2019. I can't believe I'm saying this. I actually watched 2 foreign films this week. The second is a Polish film. It's called Corpus Christi, released in 2019. Corpus Christi. If you guys look up on Rotten Tomatoes, the Rotten Tomato critics, and this is maybe a good reason for you guys to see it, 97% for the critics. Now, Eric, you're probably thinking, okay, so the critics are saying 97%. What are the audience? What's the rating for the audience members who've seen it? The user reviews.
6.9%.
93%. So it's among the
like
highest.
Everybody
marks.
loves it.
Everybody loves Corpus Christi. Okay. Now
I'm a contrarian, so that movie sucks.
Yeah, so it's directed by Jan Komasa. So I'm just going to call him Jan Komasa. He's a Polish filmmaker. He directed this film, and the lead, his name is Bartosz Bilenia. Now, one of the things is sometimes you just need a really, with a narrative, if you have a strong lead actor or actress and their face looks so immersive and you can just do anything with that face, half the battle is won regarding your film. I mean, you could have maybe Montgomery Clift read the proverbial phone book, and at least the way he's reading the phone book or turning the pages is interesting because he's just one of those faces that your eyes train to. You know, you pay attention to people like Montgomery Clift or Brando or De Niro. And this guy, I'm not saying right, Srisavasdi. You turn your eyes away from that. But with the guy like Bartosz Bilenia, he's not obviously on that level. I don't know what he's done, but when you look at his face, you go, okay, I am interested in who you are, what you're about. I like this body language. He has a presence. He has a definite presence. That's a big winning factor regarding Corpus Christi. So
he's a beautiful man.
Look at that. That's another beautiful man. Who's is that? Fabio? Who's that? Who's that beautiful man? Bartosz Bilenia? Oh yeah, with the hair. I didn't notice that. Oh, okay. I haven't seen a lot of his other but in this movie
he looks like Sebastian Bach, to be honest. I kind of want to listen to some Quicksand Jesus when we're done with this.
So in this movie has sort of a buzz cut, and in this film it centers on this 20-year-old named Daniel. He's in juvie for a previous crime he committed. And what happens during juvie is it starts off with him. You realize he's a little bit away from the other juvies, okay, the other prisoners in this jail or this detention center, but he's really into religion. He actually helps the priest say mass. He's sort of his assistant. You know, he helps with singing and handing out the pamphlets or just helping people participate. That's how the movie starts. But ultimately, Daniel is on parole now, and he leaves that detention center, that prison, whatever. He leaves juvie, and he gets a job at a sawmill. And this sawmill is probably maybe, I don't know, maybe a couple hours away. I don't know, very far away from where he was living for the past several years. And that's part of his parole, is to work at this sawmill. But instead of going straight to the sawmill, he has a smoke by this hillside, and he sees a church down the ways. And he's very religious, he's very spiritual, and he decides, instead of working at the sawmill and work off his parole and be a good citizen because he
will
free,
become a pedophile at the church.
That's another twist. That's Corpus. That's another Corpus film. That's very interesting. That's an interesting twist, Eric. But
right.
he decides I
thought I was ahead of it. But go on.
But he decides to visit the church, and I think he meets a priest there, and he decides he's mistaken for a father, a young priest. And instead of saying, hey, you know what, I'm just working at the local sawmill here, I don't want to bother anybody, I'm just trying to serve out my time, he decides to become the priest of the town. Okay. And what happened is the main pastor, he's having a little bit of a health problem or nervous breakdown. He ultimately welcomes the priest in. He doesn't really ask for too many qualifications, but he says, hey, you know what, can you do me a favor? I'm going to be gone for several days. I need a little bit of a time off. Can you help with the congregation for a couple of days? And that's the story of Corpus Christi. It's about how this convict, this juvie, decides to become the priest. And not only is he the priest, he becomes the de facto pastor of that church and that community. And what makes this thing interesting is this small town, they're haunted by this head-on collision, which costs the lives of 6 youths in one car, and there's another driver. Supposedly this driver was drunk, and he rammed his car into the kids. And you're laughing, Eric, because you have some double entendre thing with priests.
I'm up to like septuple entendre right now.
You're thinking about all the horrible things. This movie doesn't go into the pederast universe. No pedophile, none of those acts. But this guy,
hello, he got children. You want to get pasteurized?
Okay, so pasteurized. That's, you know what? I'm not going to drink milk ever again. Thank you, Eric, for that comment. Folks, what he meant is Louis Pasteur was a very he developed pasteurization. He meant Pasteur, folks. I'm going to try to clean that up there. But no, it's a great film. It's a great film, and it centers on how he actually becomes a big figure in that town, and the way he says his sermons is different from the average priest, because he's a 20-year-old and he has an excitement for religion and spirituality, and he questions God. And there's some really great monologues inside the church when he's addressing the congregation. It's a really well done film, and I think it's one of my favorite films this year, Corpus Christi. Ultimately, you're wondering whether is Daniel going to be caught by maybe his fellow juvies, or is that old priest going to catch up with him? We've seen this trope before. We probably know maybe his past might catch up with him, all that stuff. What's interesting about Corpus Christi is it's a very intense movie. It's not one of these, he used to be a lost sheep in the flock, and he comes back and he helps all these really lonely people have fun and smile and lead a better life. Nope. It goes an interesting direction at the end. We're talking about endings here. And the way it ends, it's unexpected. It's really, you got to think this guy, he's violent. He has a past, but he really believes in Jesus Christ. And you wonder, how is this movie going to end? Is it going to go the cheap route? And it does not go the cheap route. It cuts. It has an interesting cut at the end, and you go, holy bleep. Yeah. Someone definitely gets pasteurized, but not in a pederast way. Not in a pedophile way. There is some pasteurization at the end. Let's just say there's a lot of action at the end. Did we lose Bruce?
Ooh, I think Bruce just got pasteurized.
I think he's gonna try to get back here. But
Right.
it's a really interesting movie. So Corpus Christi, uh, I don't think Bruce liked the pasteurization stuff. Did he not like it? Did we just lose him on
I
the?
don't know. I was trying.
Oh, he has a good sense of humor. But no, Corpus
You
Christi.
had me laughing, and then I'm wondering if maybe it like froze, and then he just maybe got bumped off, or
He probably just got bumped off. He'll probably try to get back on. But anyways, Corpus Christi is my last recommendation for this episode of Movie Mainline. It comes out on DVD and Blu-ray on, let's see, it's out. It's out now, June 23rd. It's out now on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital. Now, Eric, you have one more pick before we go?
I do. Well, before I go, I should mention that so when it came out, but I believe with all the things that have been going on for some time, I wonder, of all the critics that did not like Detroit when it came out, I'm really curious what they think of it now. Because I've had.
Yeah, but you're saying Detroit has got a lot of
yeah, it got a lot of flack when it came out. I think the main criticism I heard was that it not glorifies the violence, but it kind of almost fetishizes it, which I have problems with that word just to begin with, because I think a lot of people, much like underrated and overrated, I think they use fetishize wrong.
Yeah.
They say, I don't like it, therefore it's racist, or I don't like it, therefore it's fetishized, or I don't like it, therefore it's this thing that the thing doesn't deserve. But I've had some run-ins with cops, and not quite to that degree, but they have not been good, we'll say. We'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
But Detroit, I think, is I don't think it fetishizes anything. It puts you in a position. If you're being a punching bag for a cop, or a cop's using it as target practice, or when you have a cop putting a gun, or anyone for that matter, but especially a cop, if some random puts a gun in my head, that's scary. They could shoot me and run off. Yeah. If someone puts a gun in my head, there's a chance that maybe I can not. By the way, not a good idea to wrestle a gun away from someone, especially if it's behind your head. Yeah. If a cop does it, you can't do shit about it. You have to sit there and take it. And that's what these characters do in Detroit. They're put in a position where there's, they could overpower the cops, but then what? Then they go to jail. Then they get arrested for assaulting a police officer or murdering a police officer. And then one of them dies as a result. Granted, in the movie, it was supposed to be a scare tactic, which, spoiler alert, one of the cops did not assume that was supposed to be a scare tactic. Detroit is a really good movie that puts you in a place of someone who's being abused by power. Maybe that's a police officer. Maybe it's a rape victim. Maybe it's someone beating on you. Maybe it's a parent beating on their child. This is a movie that puts you in the place of a victim that can't do anything about the position they're in. And it's not easy to watch. And I don't think it's supposed to be easy to watch. And that's, I don't know. I think that, I think a lot of people that maybe don't understand what victims go through, just in general, should probably watch Detroit and maybe try to put yourself in the position with the people with their hands up against a wall.
Interesting.
Stare at the wall and know that there's 3 men with guns behind you, and they could pull the trigger at any moment. Yeah. Put your hands up against a wall and know that your pants could be pulled down and someone could take advantage of you at any moment. Put your hands up against a wall and know that there's a person 3 times your size that's your parent that could be beating down on you at any moment. This does a great job of putting you in that position and maybe giving you a point of view of something, that you may not have experienced. And I think Detroit does it well. And I think everyone should see it. And I hope that with everything that's, again, been going on for a long time, but has kind of resurfaced, maybe people will watch Detroit and see it differently. I think it's a great movie, and it's 7.3 on IMDb. I think it deserves a 6.9 on IMDb. But yeah, Detroit's a wonderful movie. Go watch it. Oh, and I was going to mention Andrew mentions Detroit on Andrew watches movies, and he kind of pretty much everything Andrew says, I agree. And then the stuff I said, if any of it's new, then that's wonderful.
I was thinking about that when you said it. I was thinking about his review as well. I would agree absolutely what you're saying as far as I haven't seen this movie. I'm going to watch this movie because it kind of flew under the radar when it came out, and I didn't hear a lot about it. So I'm going to definitely go back and watch it. And I was thinking to myself while you were talking about it that honestly, that's a great lesson, I think, in general in life, is that whenever you see something that you don't understand or you're angry about, if you can try to put yourself in that person's position, like really put yourself in that person's position and understand, like you said earlier, understand the reaction. It doesn't mean the reaction that the person has is always legal or always right. But if you understand it, you have to put yourself in the level of frustration and fear and powerlessness that people get into. I think it will allow people to be a lot more, I don't know, I guess, human to each other in general. That's my preach.
I should also mention that if it wasn't clear, this movie is not easy to watch.
Yeah.
And it's not supposed to be. I think the thing that mostly got me was the I've heard a couple of critics just kind of dismiss it as fetishized, and I think that is, you're entitled to your opinion, but this is not Catherine Bigelow going, "Oh, look at the violence, isn't it cool?" She's clearly not doing this in this movie. She's like, "Look at this, isn't this a terrible thing that happened?" Yes, it is. I don't want to look at it. Well, you're going to have to, because they lived it. This is their story. This,
and I think you can see with her recent movies, that's not really the path she's going on as far as this kind of stuff.
And so, when I hear the fetishized thing, I'm like, what the?
Yeah, that's not really what she's been doing the last.
This is not a Michael Bay movie. This is not a Michael Bay movie.
Talk about what he's been up to lately. Oh my God, he's been in the news a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
With Bigelow,
was he touching people? Ooh, surprise!
There's some Megan Fox stuff that's been popping out lately about what he's been all about. So yeah.
Does this surprise anyone?
No. I mean, just look how he shoots women in his movies, or his movies. I mean, come on, it's so obvious. But
anyway. He does come on them in his movies as he shoots on them.
It's with all the water and all that stuff. It's just very
octuple entendre.
Yeah. Well, you know what? With Bigelow, it's very interesting with her. She could have just carved out a career where she's sort of this gun for hire and directing these Marvel movies. She could have done 1,000,000 Point Breaks or bigger budget Near Darks for the rest of her life if she wanted to, but she went.
I wouldn't mind another Near Dark.
Yeah, me neither.
But
not a Near Dark 2, but like another movie like that. I'd like to. Well, I mean, Detroit is absolutely a horror movie, but I would like to see her get into actual traditional horror again. But go on.
But yeah, no, it's pretty interesting. Like you said, Bruce, the last couple of movies with Detroit and Zero Dark 30, she's just completely a different filmmaker. And down the line, maybe if we start doing these movie mainline things and start spotlighting filmmakers, Bigelow should definitely be someone that we spotlight down the road, because she's
low key super interesting filmmaker for the last 20 years. You think about it,
forever and ever and ever. We love Catherine Bigelow. What's that movie she did with Ray Fiennes? Strange Days.
Strange Days, yeah.
Such an interesting film. We're going to close off with one more from Bruce Purkey. Bruce, you got one more left?
Yeah.
One more in the tank?
Yeah, I've got one. It's available on Vudu. It's available on Canopy. It's available on DirecTV. It's available on Shudder, and you can rent it all over the place. And it's a very strange movie. And it's kind of interesting how we each had like weird pairs of movies. You guys both started with, I think, Korean movies, right?
Yeah.
And then we had a couple of movies about the experience of women. And I had the women's film sites. Now you just did a Polish movie. I've got an Estonian movie, and that is November from 2017. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen November. This is a very strange movie, and it's going to be really hard to describe it. But first of all, the actors you probably never heard of. Actually, the director is Rainier Sarnet or Sarnay. I don't know how to say it. And there's main characters are Ria Lest, who plays Lena, and Jorgen Lick, two eyes in there together. I don't know how you do that. He plays Hans. And then the only character or the actor you would recognize in here is Dieter Laser, who, if you know who Dieter Laser is, he is famously Dr. Heiter from, from the infamous Human Centipede. But this movie is Estonian folk tales, but very weird and very strange and dark and surrealistic. Kind of, if you ever seen, I described it as, if you've seen Jan Svankmajer, it's like Alice, or his Little Otik. If you ever seen those very strange like movies he made, kind of mixed with a little bit of David Lynch and throw in some folk tales in there, and you kind of get the picture of this movie. Right off the bat, you'll decide if you like it or not. The very first thing you see practically is, before the credits, you see this thing called I had to write it down, a krat, K-R-A-T-T. And this is actually, I had to look it up. It's an actual thing in Estonian folklore where if you make a deal with the devil and you give him 3 drops of blood, he will bring a krat to life for you. And a krat is like this, like you take all of your tools and garden tools and sticks and stuff and you put them together, and it'll come to life as kind of this thing that will help you. But you don't know that when you start the movie. All you see is this thing that's like this trifold thing that's like garden hose and shovels, and this is all kind of medieval times, right? And it's rotating itself across the ground, and it rotates itself up to a cow, and you're like, what's happening? And it attaches itself to the cow's harness, and it starts walking the cow away, and then it rises into the sky and spins and raises the cow into the sky and takes it over to somebody else. And you're like, what the hell am I in here? And this is kind of the sort of vignettes and strange things you have. You have, ghosts of your ancestors past coming back to dinner. You have a meeting of this devil at the crossroads. And he is not the devil, you're not with horns and stuff. He's more like, almost looks like a Father Christmas kind of guy, but he's also kind of a trickster. You've got people shape-shifting into animals. All kinds of strange stuff. It's humorous. It's surrealistic. It's beautifully shot. Very, very gorgeous to look at. If you can go down the lines of those really weird, like surrealistic movies, more lines of kind of a David Lynch kind of style, but a little more of a story than David Lynch. It's not quite as out there as a lot of David Lynch's stuff. November might be something you might want to look into. I saw it on Shudder, but you can see it all those other places as well. So I like it.
You had me at Floating Cow.
Yeah, it's and I can't.
Like, you should have led with that. I'm like, stop talking. I'm in.
I mean, that's kind of got me too. I watched the very first 10 minutes and I was like, what the hell is this movie? And I can't say this is the kind of movie I would really suggest to a lot of people, but if you're really to kind of go down the path and kind of go with the flow of this one, it's got some really, really odd and interesting things in it. So there you go. That's what I got for you.
All right. So we had a lot of picks this week. We're going to be back next week for another episode of Movie Mainline. Do you guys have anything to say before we go?
Yes. I love you guys.
I love you. Love you guys too.
Thank
you. And you guys have really pretty faces, and Luis has a thick duck, and I just like being here, to tell you the truth.
We're still trying to build up our movie mainline community. Bruce is doing a lot of work with the content creators and expanding that universe, and we're all doing our thing. Eric is still trying to get me to eventually write my own script. He's sort of been my little bit of my spirit coach to try to get me out of my doldrums of just
You're gonna
watching
do it.
movies on and on
It's
again.
gonna be fantastic. It's gonna be fantastic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, before we go, I just wanted to say this. Last couple of days, I've been MIA because I've been binge watching this HBO series, Watchmen.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. This is what I realized. This is why I do Movie Mainline and that other podcast that I do. Great series. I'm a comic book guy. I love the original Watchmen. I love
Comic book. All right.
Yeah, I love Alan Moore's. Well, Alan Moore's graphic novel is a classic. I enjoyed the film Watchmen and this series, which is 9 episodes, starring Regina. Is it Regina? Yeah, Regina King. I believe Regina King's in it. She's a lead. It's a great series. A plus plus plus. But at the end, after 9 episodes, I'm thinking, after 9 hours, I could have watched 2.5 Andrei Tarkovsky films. I could have watched 10 Dario Argento movies. It's one of these things where I've realized that no matter how awesome the TV show is, it's not going to compare to, say, like, if I lose 12 hours of my viewing life, like Ozark. I've been watching Ozark, as great as it is. Do you guys ever think, I spent 20 hours watching this TV show. Do you ever think that,
Yeah.
I should have watched 10 films? Do you guys ever get that feeling?
That's kind of why it takes a lot for me to get into a TV series. I'm not against them completely, but yeah,
I'm in the same boat. I feel the exact same way. And then even just watching movies, I'm like, there's so many other movies I haven't watched. I mean, you guys listed 3 or 4 movies today that I'm like, I want to watch, but then I'm like, I'm running out of time. I can't watch all these movies. So yeah. I get you on that.
And then they have 7 seasons. And
God, no.
even if it's a mini series or a standalone series like Watchmen is 9 episodes, I was thinking, man, that's 9 hours of just time I'm not going to get back.
Real quick, I would say here's where I'll kind of concede a little bit on television. And there's like a Boomtown got canceled after 2 seasons, and he can't even find the second season. So really, there's 1 season. Anderson mentions The Patriot. That's a really good one.
Patriot, yeah.
Hannibal's on Netflix now.
Yep.
That's ended at 3 seasons. Like the ones that like go 1-2 seasons or whatever and stop, and they're good. I can get with that because I know that they're not going to come out with a 4th season and then a 5th season and then a 37th season and then an 812th season. Like it's good to get in and get out. But
you know what? I totally agree. It's good to get in and get out. Bruce, you're more of a family man than me and Eric, but we still, at least I'm glad that you share our views, at least with cinema, right, Bruce, when it gets in and out. So, all right, folks, that is it. That is it. I just saw Eric laugh. That was not a double entendre, but I'm just going to say it was, because that's how I roll. Like to Five Bloods,
I bit of the old in and out.
Yeah, like to Five Bloods, I have a lot of things rolling. There's a lot of things rolling with this Movie Mainline stuff. So we will see you guys next week. Oh, and a little bit of a teaser, folks. We are on an ongoing project to start spotlighting filmmakers. So if there are filmmakers you might think would be interesting for our podcast to cover, we may start covering stuff by filmmakers we really love. We have no idea who's going to start it off. You know, it could be Brian De Palma or Steven Spielberg. Never Steven Spielberg. I was just joking. But it could be someone like William Friedkin. Like maybe Spielberg? What, Eric?
No, that's too much.
No.
Too much. But guys like Billy Friedkin we could do. But that's just a little bit of a hint. But until next time, we will see you here at Movie Mainline. Luis Lacau will be with us soon. We miss Luis. And that is it. Take care, guys.